Well. It appears that Zelensky is getting the last laugh this week because he, in the face of all odds, as the world is turning their backs on Ukraine, forgetting about Ukraine, even resurrecting the old woo-flu mask-up narrative, Zelensky was able to extract concessions out of the Biden administration. Never before has the Biden administration ever said that it would send, long range. I've heard people call them long range missiles. I'm not exactly sure what the general, because it is kind of vague terms. You have short range, intermediate range, and then you have intercontinental. These are not intercontinental ballistic missiles, but they are what the media is calling long range missiles. And certainly longer range than the Biden administration has provided up until this point. They did not want to provide these kinds of missiles. These are not javelins. These are not RPGs. These are missiles that you launch from a missile launcher that goes a long way. 190 miles, they say. 190 miles is far enough to hit Russia, the country, not just Russians inside Ukraine, to hit Russian territory from Kiev. And of course, moving these missiles around different parts of Ukraine would allow Ukraine to attack different parts of Russia. Now, I don't think that there is anywhere in Ukraine that is 190 miles away from Moscow. So they definitely are not going to be able to strike the Russian capital, but they could strike certainly other cities in Russia that are within 190 miles of Ukraine. And if I lived anywhere in Russia within 190 miles of the Ukrainian border, I'd be very concerned. Because we know that, Ukraine, and you can understand this, has no qualms about attacking inside Russia. They certainly feel that it's fair game because the Russians are operating on their, on their soil. So, they would have no problem doing the same in Russia. It's all's fair in love and war. And, if you ask me from an abstract standpoint, do I really think, would it be so bad for Ukraine to attack inside Russia when Russia's attacking inside Ukraine? No, not like from a moral perspective, but from a geopolitical perspective, that would be a disaster. Because they would be doing it with American weapons. And so this draws America even more directly into this war with Russia. When you have American missiles blowing up houses and other buildings inside of Mother Russia, that is going to send a very unfortunate signal to both the Russian state and the Russian people. And the message it will send is that Russia is under attack by the United States. That's not a message that you want to send to a nuclear-armed power, for obvious reasons. This, presumably, is why, up until this point, the Biden administration had drawn a line and said, no, Ukraine, we're not going to give you, weapons like this. We'll give you weapons that you can use on the ground. We'll give you tanks. They're even slow rolling, but they still said, hey, we'll give you F-16s, which also could be used to attack inside of Russia. But they were not providing them with these particular missiles. And even still, now that they've announced this, they said it will be a limited number. Okay, how limited? For how long? Is this a trial run to see, okay, will the Ukrainians try and use these missiles to start World War III? And if so, if they try that, we won't give them more missiles. But if they're good boys, and they only use the missiles the way that we would want them used, then perhaps we'll send them more missiles. It's all pretty darn stupid, if you ask me. It's all coming pretty darn close to World War III. But nobody seems to care. Nobody's cared from the beginning. Nobody cared in 2014. Nobody cares in 2023. Well, I care. In 2014, I wasn't caught under this. I wasn't learned about the situation. I didn't necessarily know what was going on. It took me a while to figure it out. Probably until 2018 before I really knew what was going on and understood, that, hey, there was this CIA coup, and that was a proxy war. In 2014, I'll admit, I was just not that up on this stuff. But it's been 9 years. And I think probably, maybe not most Americans, but a good chunk of Americans understand what's going on here. And thankfully, we're seeing some pushback, in the House of Representatives, but not enough. We're seeing some pushback in the Senate, but not enough. And we've seen very moderate, obviously on the surface, rhetorically, the Biden administration 100% behind the Zelensky regime. It'll support them. We will to fight to the last Ukrainian, all of that. But the Biden administration has tried to put the brakes on Ukraine a little bit here and there, with stuff like, no, we're not going to send you F-16s until they said, okay, we'll send you F-16s. No, we're not going to send you these longer range missiles that you could use to attack inside of Russia, until now they are saying that they will. And so maybe all they've been doing is just trying to milk this conflict to spend as much money on it as possible by sending them higher quantities of small arms and, well, even larger munitions that are just not quite, long-range missiles. Stuff that they can keep the war going without quite starting World War III and actually getting us all in trouble. But now, since they're this deeply invested in it, they feel the pressure to actually start handing over those weapons that could escalate the situation into a world war, because they don't know how to back down. And they only got into this mess, probably, to sell arms. They didn't get into it to actually start a world war. But I think in trying to make money, perhaps all they've done is delay the inevitable. They didn't have a plan on how to extract themselves. Once they created this new quagmire in Ukraine to replace the quagmire in Afghanistan, how do they keep the fire burning without pushing Russia too far? And because at a certain point, with the level of support that the U.S. gives Ukraine, Russia will still eventually overtake Ukraine. So Ukraine does, in order to maintain their positions, they need more and more help from the West, which is pushing the Russians closer and closer. Do I think that we're just going to wake up one day and Vladimir Putin's launched a preemptive nuclear strike? No, it's not going to be. It's not going to be that simple. It will be complicated. It will be messy. People will be dead. It won't be entirely clear who's responsible. And then somebody will act. And that act will change the world. And so there's a disaster waiting to happen. Just like every escalation. Brings us closer and closer to the brink. And there is no one serious enough in the West to care. So with that said, I will hopefully see you folks back here tomorrow if we haven't all been vaporized.